Have you ever had a moment where you simply stopped, not because you were tired, but because something inside you just paused? You were scrolling, moving, doing, and then, for no clear reason, your thumb stopped. Your eyes stayed, and a quiet question surfaced. Why here? Why now? Most people dismiss this as random noise in a busy world. But what if that pause wasn't a glitch in your attention span? What if it was a signal from a part of you that rarely gets to speak? We are taught to believe that life is a straight line of cause and effect. You set a goal, you work hard, you get results. But if you've lived long enough to experience real change, you know that the most significant turning points rarely come from a 5-year plan. They come from a feeling, a nudge, a moment of clarity that arrives like a stranger at the door. The psychologist Carl Jung had a word for these moments that logic can't quite explain. He called them synchronicities, not miracles, but meaningful coincidences, where your inner world and the outer world align for just a second. When people use phrases like, "the universe has a plan for you," they are often clumsily reaching for this truth. It's not about magic. It's about maturity. When the structure of your inner world reaches a certain point, it begins to recognize things that were always there. You don't find the path because you're lucky. You find it because you're finally ready to see it. This isn't a video about fate pulling strings in the sky. This is an invitation to look at your own life, not as a series of random events, but as a process, a story with an invisible architecture. And if you stay with this until the end, you might realize that this exact moment, right now, isn't just another data point in your day. It's a marker. The point where you stop being a passenger in your own life and start becoming conscious of the journey. You didn't find this video. It found the version of you that was ready. Number 1, you didn't find this video. It found the version of you that was ready. Think about that for a second. You weren't hit with a catastrophic event. No angel appeared. No voice boomed from the clouds. It was something far quieter and, in many ways, far more significant. You simply paused. In a world engineered to steal your attention every 2 seconds, you gave yours away to something you didn't even know you were looking for. That tiny act of pausing is an earthquake in the psyche. We walk around with the illusion of absolute free will. We think we click on things because we choose to. We swipe because we're curious. But if you examine the architecture of your own life, you'll notice that the big shifts rarely happen when you're in full control. They happen when you're open. When the usual noise of the ego quiets down for just a moment, and something else peeks through. Have you ever noticed that before a major change in your life, there's a period of weirdness? You start asking questions that don't have easy answers. The hobbies that used to fill your weekends start to feel like empty routines. Conversations that once entertained you now feel like background static. You might even find yourself drawn to topics you used to ignore. Philosophy, psychology, the meaning behind things. This isn't you losing interest in life. This is your consciousness evolving. It's like outgrowing a coat you've worn for years. It still fits, technically, but it feels tight. It doesn't move with you anymore. I once knew a man named Daniel. From the outside, his life was a blueprint for stability. Good marriage, solid career, a house in a neighborhood with good schools. But Daniel told me he felt like he was watching his own life through a window. He was present, but he wasn't there. He was going through the motions, but the feeling behind the motions had vanished. Then he noticed a pattern. He kept getting into the same arguments with his wife, the same frustrations at work, the same feeling of being unseen. He chalked it up to bad luck or difficult people until the pattern became too loud to ignore. He realized he wasn't a victim of circumstance. He was a participant in a script he hadn't written, but was performing perfectly. This is where Jung's work becomes a flashlight in a dark room. He said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This isn't a mystical curse, it's a practical reality. Think of your unconscious mind as the operating system of a computer. You see the screen, you move the mouse, you think you're in control. But underneath, code written years ago, by your parents, your trauma, your society, is running the show. If you never look at that code, you'll wonder why the computer keeps crashing. You'll blame the weather, the users, the stars. But the crash was simply the code doing what it was programmed to do. You're not hearing this by accident because you might be standing in front of a repeating pattern in your own life right now. Maybe it's a relationship that keeps ending the same way. Maybe it's a ceiling at work you can't seem to break through. Maybe it's an anger that flares up at the smallest things. These aren't signs that you're broken. They are symptoms of an unconscious program running in the background. They are the universe's way of handing you the source code and saying, take a look. Imagine your psyche as a vast, ancient house. For years, you've lived in the living room. It's comfortable, decorated nicely, and you know where all the furniture is. But there are doors you've never opened. Basements you've never visited. Attics filled with dust. The unconscious is those locked rooms. And when you pause, when you stop and feel that pull towards something deeper, it's because the people in the basement have started knocking. They want to be let into the living room. They are tired of being ignored. Most people hear a knock and turn up the music. They distract. They consume. They move faster. But if you're still here, listening to this, you're one of the few who is willing to walk towards the knocking. That doesn't make you special in an egotistical way. It makes you ready. And readiness is the only requirement for the next step. What's happening right now isn't magic. It's alignment. Like a radio slowly tuning into a frequency that was always broadcasting. You're starting to pick up the signal of your own depth. The question isn't whether you believe in fate. The question is whether you're honest enough to ask, what in me is finally ready to be seen? The moment the inner compass stops spinning. Number 2. The moment the inner compass stops spinning, when you start to suspect that you're running on old code, a new feeling begins to creep in. It's the feeling of being watched, not from the outside, but from within. People might dress this up in spiritual language, saying things like, you have been chosen. But if you peel back the layers of that phrase, you find a truth that is far more grounded and far more powerful. It's not that you've been singled out by a cosmic force. It's that you have reached a point of inner ripeness where you can finally perceive what has always been there. For most of our lives, we operate from the ego. The ego is the manager. It's the part of us that gets us to work on time, that worries about what others think, that builds a reputation and defends it. The ego is not the enemy. It's a necessary structure. It's the scaffolding that holds us up while we're being built. But Jung spoke of something deeper than the ego. He called it the self, with a capital S. The self is the total architecture of the psyche. It includes the ego, but it also includes the shadow, the unconscious, the potential we haven't yet realized. When the ego has done its job for long enough, when you've built your career, established your identity, and proven your worth, the self starts to stir. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It whispers through dissatisfaction, through curiosity, through a vague sense that something is missing, even when everything seems to be there. Have you ever accomplished a major goal only to feel empty the next day? That emptiness isn't ingratitude. It's the self tapping you on the shoulder, reminding you that the ego's victory is not the soul's destination. In the old myths, this calling into depth was often portrayed as a descent. Look at the story of Inanna, an ancient Sumerian goddess. She was the queen of heaven, powerful, radiant, living at the top of the world. But she chose to descend into the underworld. At each of the 7 gates, she was stripped of something. her crown, her jewelry, her robes. By the time she stood before her sister, the queen of the underworld, she was naked and powerless. She was killed and hung on a hook. This sounds like a tragedy, but in the myth, this descent was necessary. From that death, she was reborn with new wisdom, able to integrate both the light above and the dark below. When someone says you've been chosen for a journey, this is the template they are unknowingly referencing. It's not a promise of an easy life. It's an invitation to descend, to be stripped of the superficial layers so you can find what is real. You are not being asked to suffer. You are being asked to be authentic. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Notice he didn't say the goal of a lifetime. He said the privilege. It is a gift to be forced into becoming real. But to receive that gift, you have to let go of the masks that got you love, the masks that kept you safe, the masks that helped you succeed. They worked, but they are not the whole story. Think of your life as a ship navigating by the stars. For years, you've been following the stars of external validation, money, status, approval. These are bright stars, easy to see, but they are not fixed. They move based on the current of culture. One year, the star is a certain job. The next year, it's a different body. Sailing by these stars keeps you busy, but it doesn't keep you true. But when the self wakes up, a new star appears. It's not brighter, but it is fixed. It's the star of your own internal truth. The compass needle, which used to spin wildly based on every external gust of wind, finally steadies. It points north. And when your compass points true north, you start to notice that the winds, the circumstances of your life, begin to arrange themselves differently. Not because the wind changed, but because your direction is now stable. This is the synchrony that people mistake for magic. You start meeting the right people at the right time. You stumble upon books that answer questions you just asked. You find yourself in places that feel strangely like home. The universe didn't rearrange itself for you. You simply stopped sailing in circles. You are now moving in a straight line towards your own center, and the things that belong on that path naturally appear. So what does this shift feel like on a Tuesday afternoon? It feels like a growing intolerance for small talk. It feels like a desire to be alone, not out of depression, but out of a need to hear your own thoughts. It feels like old environments that once felt safe now feel like cages. These aren't signs that you're becoming antisocial or difficult. They are signs that your psychological structure is reorganizing. You are outgrowing the container that once held you. Not everyone reaches this point. Many people live their entire lives in the ego's orbit, and for them it is enough. They are content with the surface. But if you feel that pull, that quiet, relentless pull towards something deeper, it is a sign of maturity. It is not a favor. It is a responsibility. The responsibility to keep going, even when the path gets dark. The door that opens only once. Number 3, the door that opens only once. We've talked about the pause, and we've talked about the shift in direction. Now we have to address the nature of this moment itself. There is a reason why spiritual traditions and psychological frameworks alike stress the importance of the present moment. It's not just a cliché for mindfulness blogs. It is a structural reality of the psyche. When we say this message will not repeat, it sounds like a marketing trick, a way to create urgency. But it is actually a profound truth about consciousness. The person you are right now, the specific combination of thoughts, feelings, experiences, and openness that exists in this moment, will never exist again. You can reread a book, you can rewatch a video, but you can never re-experience the meeting between that content and this specific version of your awareness. Jung understood that the psyche is not a static thing. It is a living, flowing process. He compared the meeting of two personalities to the contact of two chemicals. If there is a reaction, Both are transformed. The same is true for you and any meaningful piece of information. If a reaction happens, if something inside you clicks, resonates, or even resists, you are no longer the same as you were before the reaction. There was a viewer once who left a comment that has never left me. He said that he had heard about the concept of the shadow years ago. He read the books, understood the theory, and moved on. He was busy building a life. Then, a decade later, his father passed away. In the grief and the chaos of settling the estate, he saw himself reacting in ways he didn't recognize. He saw envy towards his siblings. He saw rage that was disproportionate. He saw a smallness in himself that he had spent his whole life denying. One night, he picked up a book on Jung that he hadn't touched in 10 years. He read the same chapter on the shadow, but this time, he said, "I'm not reading with my eyes. I'm reading with my wounds." The words hadn't changed. The book was identical. But he had changed. The door was the same door, but he was a different person walking through it. That is what we mean when we say the message will not repeat. It's not that the message disappears. It's that you disappear, the old you, and a new one takes its place. If you walk past the door today, you might find it again tomorrow, but you will find it as tomorrow's self, not today's. This creates a subtle but important pressure, not the pressure of fear, but the pressure of presence. It asks you to recognize that when a layer of awareness opens, you have to stay with it long enough to let it change you. You don't have to understand everything. You don't have to solve your entire life tonight. But you cannot run away. Because running away doesn't just postpone the meeting. It changes the nature of the future meeting. Imagine your consciousness is a still lake. Right now, the wind is calm, and the surface is flat. A stone drops. This video, this idea, this feeling, and the ripples spread perfectly, touching every shore. If you walk away and come back tomorrow, the wind might be blowing. The water might be choppy. You can drop the same stone, but the ripples will be distorted. They will never create the same pattern. The fear of missing out is a low-level emotion, but the recognition of a unique moment is a high-level awareness. This isn't about making a rash decision. It's about honoring the state you are in. If something is resonating right now, respect it. Don't push it away because it's uncomfortable. Don't postpone looking at it because you're busy. Time will always move, but consciousness will never stand still in the same place twice. The door opens only when the pressure inside matches the pressure outside. It's a temporary alignment. If you hesitate, the pressures shift. The door is still there, but you are no longer in the right position to open it. The invitation of this moment is not to panic. It is to pay attention, to listen as if your life depends on it. Because in a very real way, the quality of your future life depends on what you integrate today. When the ancient story speaks your name. Number 4. When the ancient story speaks your name. If this moment is resonating deeper than a simple intellectual curiosity, you have to consider that what is waking up inside you is not just personal. It is transpersonal. It is old. Jung proposed that beneath the layer of our personal unconscious, the layer filled with our own forgotten memories and repressed wounds, there is a deeper layer that we all share. He called it the collective unconscious. Think of the collective unconscious as a vast underground ocean. Your personal mind is a bucket you've pulled up from that ocean. It contains water that is uniquely yours, shaped by your specific journey. But the water itself, the H2O, is the same as the water in every other bucket. The collective unconscious is that common water. It is the repository of all human experience, all human patterns, all human symbols. Jung called these universal patterns archetypes. An archetype is not a detailed image. It's a tendency. It's a template. For example, every human culture has a version of the hero. The details change. It might be a knight, a samurai, or a single mother working 2 jobs. But the underlying pattern is the same. A figure who leaves the known world, faces trials, and returns transformed. You don't learn what a hero is. You recognize it. It resonates because the template is already in your psyche. When a story, a myth, or even a YouTube video moves you to your core, it might be activating one of these ancient templates. You might be feeling the pull of the seeker archetype, the part of you that can no longer accept easy answers. You might be touched by the orphan archetype, the part that feels alone and longs for belonging. You might be standing at the threshold of the transformer archetype, where the old self must be dismantled to make room for the new. You didn't invent these feelings. They have been lived by millions of humans for thousands of years. When you feel them, you are not alone. You are tapping into the collective inheritance of your species. Look at a simple story like The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy is on a gray, monotonous farm. She dreams of somewhere over the rainbow. A tornado rips her from her home and drops her in a technicolor world. She is told to follow the yellow brick road, to find the wizard, external authority, who can fix everything. She meets companions, a scarecrow who thinks he has no brain, a tin man who thinks he has no heart, a lion who thinks he has no courage. They journey together, facing trials. In the end, they discover that the wizard is a fraud, and the qualities they sought were inside them all along. Dorothy had the power to go home in her own silver slippers, in the book version. Why does a century-old children's story still make adults emotional? Because it's not just a story. It's an archetypal map of the individuation process. It's the journey of realizing that the answers are not out there, but within. When that story resonates, it's the collective unconscious calling your name, reminding you of a truth your soul has always known. Modern neuroscience is catching up to this idea. Researchers have found that the human brain responds to certain symbolic patterns. Light versus dark, the journey, the fall, the redemption, with measurable activity in deep, ancient parts of the brain. These aren't learned responses. They are hardwired. Our brains are structured to understand the world through story. And the deepest stories are the ones that have been told since we sat around fires in caves. Picture the collective unconscious as a massive library buried beneath a city. Each of us lives in a house on the surface. Our personal memories are the furniture in our living room. But every house has a basement, and all the basements connect to the same underground library. When you hear a story or an idea that shakes you, you've opened a door in your basement. You've stepped out of your personal living room and into the library of humanity. So when you feel a profound pull towards a new understanding, don't just ask, what does this mean for me? Ask, what ancient pattern is waking up? Are you being asked to be a warrior and fight for something? Are you being asked to be a healer and tend to a wound? Are you being asked to be a sage and seek wisdom? When you name the archetype, you give it form. You move from being blindly driven by it to consciously collaborating with it. This calling isn't loud. It's a deep familiarity. A sense of I've been here before even when you haven't. A sense of this is my path even when you can't prove it. Pay attention to those feelings. They are the library speaking. Standing at the threshold of becoming real. Number 5. Standing at the threshold of becoming real. We've moved through the pause, the shift, the uniqueness of the moment, and the ancient call. Now we arrive at the edge, the threshold. Individuation is the word Jung used for the lifelong process of becoming a truly integrated human being. It's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. It's not about becoming special. It's about becoming real. You know you are approaching this threshold when the old ways of living start to chafe. Not because they are wrong, but because they are incomplete. You might still go to the same job. You might still love the same people. But there's a new quality to your presence. You start asking different questions. Instead of how can I be happy, you start asking how can I be authentic. Instead of how can I avoid pain, you start asking what is this pain trying to teach me. Individuation begins with a brutal honesty with yourself. It requires you to look at the shadow, the parts of yourself you've hidden away, the anger you pretend you don't have, the envy you're ashamed of, the ambition you downplay to seem humble. The shadow isn't evil. It's just disowned. It's the part of you that didn't fit into the person you were told to be. What if the trait you dislike most in other people is actually a reflection of something you haven't accepted in yourself? That's a hard question to sit with. But sitting with it is the work. Think of your life as a house you've been building for decades. The main floor is beautiful. It's where you entertain guests. It's presentable. But individuation demands that you go into the basement. The basement is dark. It's full of old furniture, broken things, and maybe some mold. It's not pretty, but it's part of the house. If you never go down there, the mold spreads. The floorboards rot. Eventually, the main floor caves in. Going into the basement is not a punishment. It's maintenance. It's structural integrity. When you start integrating the shadow, you become less judgmental of others. How can you judge someone for their greed when you've made peace with your own? How can you hate someone for their weakness when you've embraced your own fragility? Integration doesn't make you weak. It makes you real. And real people have a weight to them. They have presence. They don't need to pretend. This process is not linear. Some days you'll feel like a sage, full of wisdom. Other days you'll feel like a child, lost and confused. That's normal. The confusion is the old structure crumbling. It feels like destruction, but it's actually construction. The caterpillar doesn't know it's becoming a butterfly. It just knows it's turning into soup inside the chrysalis. That soup phase is necessary. It's the dissolution of the old form, so the new one can emerge. At the threshold, you stop blaming. You see that the conflicts in your outer life are mirrors of conflicts in your inner life. This doesn't create guilt, it creates responsibility. And responsibility is power. If I caused the problem, I can change the problem. If I'm just a victim of fate, I'm powerless. Individuation hands you the keys and says, you drive. You don't become perfect, you become more of what you actually are. The mask drops. The performance ends. And what's left is something rare, a genuine human being. Standing at this threshold, the only question is whether you have the courage to step through. Not knowing the whole path, not having all the answers, just taking one step into the dark, trusting that the ground will meet you. The architecture of a life. Perhaps by now, you understand that what people call destiny was never about being selected by a cosmic lottery. It was always about depth. It was about reaching a point in your own evolution where the surface stopped being enough. The world didn't change. The noise didn't stop. But something inside you shifted. And because of that shift, everything you encounter now carries a different weight. This moment, right now, is not a coincidence. It is the result of 1,000 small preparations. Questions you asked, nights you stayed awake, disappointments that stripped away illusion. You are here because you are ready to be here. The journey of becoming yourself does not promise comfort. It promises meaning. It does not promise an easy path. It promises a real one. The most valuable thing you can carry away from this is not a new belief system or a set of techniques. It's the quiet commitment to honesty. To stop lying to yourself about what you feel, what you want, and what you fear. That honesty is the foundation upon which a real life is built. If these words have touched something in you, don't let it pass by unnoticed. Press the like button as a simple gesture to yourself. A marker that says, I was here, and I felt something. Subscribe if you want to continue walking this path of depth, exploring the architecture of the psyche and the journey toward wholeness. And remember, the door is open. But it won't stay open forever. Not because the world closes it, but because you will never again be this version of yourself. Step through while you can.